Harry and Meghan Markle's surrogacy scandal has entered the mainstream media domain.
Did you think it was a parody? Because I thought that this was AI. I thought this cannot be real.
The reason I didn't think it was AI is because it looks like the stomach is fake, where the baby, I swear that's the first thing I thought.
They say every fairy tale starts with once upon a time, but in Meghan Markle's version, it seems to start with depending on which interview you watch.
And this is from a woman who attacks her father mercilessly in the series.
According to public narrative, the Duchess of Drama has managed to make one of the most natural experiences in life, pregnancy, sound like a Netflix anthology.
Meghan at the Albert Hall. How many weeks pregnant was she supposed to be? Was it about 8 weeks? And she looks as if she's at least 5 months pregnant.
One episode, it's all glowing motherhood and avocado toast. The next, it's a near tragic ordeal that no one could ever understand. Even her biggest supporters whisper that the story keeps changing faster than the British weather.
Meghan Markle told the world she was a fraud. Perhaps we should have all listened.
Sources close to royal watchers joke that tracking Meghan's pregnancy timeline requires a PhD in plot twists. 1 minute she's nesting in the sunshine, the next she's recalling trauma that apparently surfaced years later. And right in the middle of this narrative, roller coaster stands Tom Bower, the biographer who never calls her out directly.
And that ridiculous story about how they first met. The whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Yet somehow leaves the audience clutching their teacups in disbelief. Bower doesn't accuse, he documents. He quietly highlights the details that don't sit right and lets viewers draw their own conclusions. Because sometimes the most devastating exposure isn't what's said, it's what's left unsaid. And when it comes to Meghan's pregnancy story, let's just say, according to Bower's research, there's more mystery than maternity.
And also, why is the belly several shades browner than anywhere else? It's not supposed to be browner.
But what he uncovered next made even the palace whisper, wait, that doesn't add up. From the outside, Meghan's pregnancy story looked picture perfect. Designer dresses, glowing interviews, and a royal baby on the way. But as sources point out, that same story somehow evolved every time she retold it. What began as a cheerful account of baby kicks and morning smoothies slowly transformed into something deeper, darker, and far more confusing.
Do you remember Meghan actually refused to use the hospital that was usually used by royals and refused to use all of the normal medical staff, and there was all of the weirdness over the timing of the birth of Archie?
Public observers noticed that her tone seemed to shift with each new platform. On one show, she was playful, joking about late-night cravings. On another, she described emotional turmoil and fear. Then came the podcast episode, where she spoke about trauma that allegedly changed her forever. It wasn't one story, it was several competing versions dressed in the same crown. Tom Bower, ever the quiet investigator, doesn't shout inconsistency. He simply places the stories side by side and lets the gaps speak louder than accusations ever could. In his view, the issue isn't what Meghan said, it's how effortlessly her narrative seemed to adapt. Almost like each retelling was curated to fit a new audience, a new brand, or a new sympathy wave. To the casual listener, it sounds like emotional evolution. To Bower, it looks more like a performance in progress.
They were like, I just saw this picture I'd forgotten about when you were so pregnant with Archie. I mean, I gained 65 pounds with both pregnancies.
Oh my God, you're so tiny.
And you're in these 5-inch, I always just wear my 5-inch pointy-toed stilettos. You're like, you have the most enormous bump, and your tiny little ankles are bracing themselves in these high heels, but all of my weight was in the front.
Right.
So you're just going, how on earth? Like people,
How on earth?
How on earth am I not just tipping, face planting? It's like, this is why I'm always clinging very closely to my husband. Please don't let me fall. Yeah.
And as his notes begin to connect the dots, one thing becomes disturbingly clear. The pregnancy story may have changed, but the questions it raised never did. But wait, the real chaos begins when the timelines stop making sense. When it comes to Meghan's pregnancy timelines, even the most devoted royal watchers have had to grab a notepad. According to public discussion, the dates surrounding her announcements, appearances, and supposed due periods feel like puzzle pieces from 3 different boxes. One moment she's described as newly pregnant in an interview that aired months after Archie's birth. Another time, she recalls nesting during a period that doesn't quite fit the palace calendar. Sources say Tom Bower noticed something subtle, the way those blurred overlaps create more confusion than clarity. It's not that the dates are wrong, it's that they seem soft, bending just enough to match the mood of the moment. In one account, she's weeks from delivery. In another, she's just discovering the news. For Bower, that gentle shifting isn't coincidence, it's storytelling at work.
It's actually torture to listen to that woman now, because every other word out of her mouth is a lie. None of it really makes sense.
Observers online have turned the timelines into a digital detective board, circling headlines, comparing photos, and questioning how official events aligned with supposed maternity stages. And while Bauer never points a finger, he does underline an uncomfortable truth. In royal life, details matter, especially when they don't align. To him, this isn't about conspiracy, it's about consistency. Because when the calendar refuses to cooperate, credibility starts to crack. And once the dates begin to wobble, the next chapter, the medical mystery, becomes even harder to ignore. If the timelines made people raise an eyebrow, the medical details made them lean all the way forward. According to sources familiar with royal watchers' debates, Meghan's accounts of her hospital experiences read less like medical records and more like evolving screenplays. One story painted a calm, almost glamorous delivery, laughter, lighthearted moments, even a cheeky fast food stop. Yet in later interviews, the same event became a tale of danger and distress, marked by alleged complications and medical urgency.
There is no way on earth that any doctor on this earth would allow a woman with a geriatric pregnancy, high risk, and with 2 epidurals to leave the hospital within an hour of giving birth, which means that the doctors would have had to deliver Archie, spank his ass, wipe Meghan Markle, put her on a van or whatever, and just send her off without testing to see whether there was any nerve damage, because epidurals do that.
Tom Bauer never calls it false. He simply notes that such dramatic tone shifts don't typically happen in recollections this significant. His writing implies a kind of narrative reconstruction, as though each retelling was edited to match her public image at that particular time. Early Meghan, radiant and relatable. Later Meghan, fragile yet heroic. Observers argue that this isn't about motherhood, it's about message management. When medical details fluctuate, even slightly, audiences start to sense that something's off. Was it creative emphasis, memory gap, or a storytelling instinct that can't resist a rewrite? Bauer doesn't speculate, he just lists the contradictions. But when those differences pile up, the effect is unmistakable. The story starts to feel more like a production than a moment of truth. And just when you think the inconsistencies can't go any deeper, Bauer finds something stranger still. The emotional framing seems to change just as dramatically as the facts. That's where the real rebrand begins.
Skin, when it stretches, gets lighter. It doesn't get darker. Does she think that is where 65 pounds of weight was carried?
By the time Meghan began speaking publicly about her pregnancies again, something had clearly shifted, not in the story, but in the emotion. Sources familiar with the public narrative note how each retelling carried a new tone, almost as if every appearance required a new version of vulnerability. The once lighthearted, yoga-loving mom-to-be now spoke in somber tones about pain, pressure, and personal battles. It wasn't just recollection, it was reinvention. Tom Bauer, ever the biographer of contradictions, observed how emotion became Meghan's most strategic tool. One year, she was framed as the glowing symbol of modern motherhood. The next, as a woman barely surviving the spotlight. Each emotional angle invited a new audience. Empathy from some, skepticism from others. To Bauer, this wasn't coincidence. It was choreography.
Here, the doctor talks about both the children, and listen to what she says.
So you tell me to tell you something that maybe a dozen people actually know that's going to come out very soon. Okay. Meghan Markle, the reason why you watch her interviews and she just seems off, she's owned by a pharmaceutical company. The 2 children that she had, they're not hers. She didn't have them with Harry. And how her and Harry met is that she's a prostitute.
Public perception began to shift too. Even casual viewers started noticing the pattern. Every retelling seemed designed to spark a particular reaction: admiration, pity, or outrage. The story was no longer just about pregnancy. It had become a mirror reflecting whichever image Meghan wanted the world to see at that moment. And through it all, Bauer never inserted judgment. He simply laid out the emotional pivot points, the kind that make you wonder where authenticity ends and performance begins. But the real intrigue isn't in the emotion itself. It's in the silence that follows it, the things she didn't say that spoke even louder. And that's where Bauer's investigation takes a sharper turn. Sometimes, the loudest part of a story is the silence between the sentences. And according to sources familiar with royal commentary, Meghan's silences have become almost as famous as her speeches.
Assumption that if I was going to go into business, it would be fashion or beauty. But those 5 years at home, I wasn't running around wearing beautiful outfits. I was probably in Birkenstocks and sweats like the rest of us, especially during COVID, or just barefoot at home.
For every emotional detail shared in interviews, there's another moment she avoids entirely. A detail skipped, a timeline left blurry, a question redirected with a smile. Those gaps, Tom Bauer suggests, are where the real intrigue lives. He doesn't accuse, he observes. He points out how selective storytelling can be more powerful than full transparency. When one interview dives deep into emotional trauma but skips over basic logistics. The omission becomes its own kind of statement. It's the "why didn't she mention that" that keeps audiences buzzing. Public perception has turned those gaps into open invitations for speculation. Some see privacy, others see strategy. Either way, the result is the same. The unanswered questions echo louder than any confession ever could. Bauer calls this the art of narrative restraint, where what's left unsaid carries more influence than any headline. In the world of royal storytelling, silence can be protection or performance. And Meghan, intentionally or not, has mastered both. But while silence builds mystery, Bauer's next discovery shows how he uses that very quiet to construct something more dangerous. Doubt without accusation, exposure without blame. And that's where his real genius begins to show.
She was stupid enough to show her skinny arms. Well, if the weight didn't go on her arms, it didn't go on her face, it didn't go on her legs, it didn't go on her bust, where did that 65 pounds go?
Tom Bauer doesn't shout, he doesn't accuse, he simply arranges facts and lets the silence between them do the heavy lifting. Sources say his approach is almost surgical. He doesn't call Meghan dishonest, he just shows you enough inconsistencies to make you wonder. It's a method so precise that even legal experts allegedly admire how he walks the fine line between exposure and defamation. Public narrative often paints Bauer as the man who never needs to raise his voice to drop a bombshell. Instead of sensationalism, he delivers subtle tension, presenting Meghan's own words in chronological order, then stepping back as the contradictions quietly build their own verdict. It's not an attack, it's architecture. The brilliance of Bauer's strategy lies in restraint. By never directly accusing, he appears fair. By avoiding conclusions, he invites readers to form their own. And in that illusion of neutrality, the impact multiplies. Audiences feel like detectives, not spectators. They're not told what to think. They discover it.
Trevor put an article out there that Meghan had a hysterectomy and couldn't have children, and that was a big issue in their relationship. So that says a lot to the fake royal kids right now, because obviously they couldn't have come out of her. So that's something that she obviously is going to have to deal with.
According to media analysts, that's the secret to Bauer's lasting influence. He doesn't destroy reputations. He lets them crumble under the weight of their own inconsistencies. And just when it seems like his investigation has said all it can, Bauer delivers a final twist, not about Meghan's actions, but about what her storytelling truly reveals. Because the shocking truth was never the pregnancy, it was the pattern. When Tom Bauer finally pulls back the curtain, the revelation isn't a bombshell about medical files or secret documents. It's something far more psychological. According to sources close to his research process, Bauer's real discovery is that Meghan's stories don't evolve by accident. They adapt. Each retelling seems to serve a new purpose. Sympathy during scandal, strength during backlash, empowerment during interviews. It's not a lie, he suggests. It's a strategy. Public narrative frames this as Meghan's unique form of storytelling, emotional, cinematic, and deeply curated. She doesn't just recount experiences, she remixes them for resonance. One story becomes three, each tailored for maximum emotional impact. And while that might make her a compelling speaker, it also makes her timeline harder to trust.
Anecdotal experience with my wife, who was very, very large during pregnancy, the idea of her moving like that would have been impossible. She just couldn't have done it. So, she was pale, she was swollen, she was very large at the time. The idea of her getting low like that, I just don't know if she physically could have done it. So it is shocking to me. It does look very strange.
If the children were born that way, it would mean that Archie and Lily were no longer to be allowed in the line of succession.
Bauer allegedly reveals that what's truly shocking isn't the pregnancy itself, it's how the story refuses to settle. The facts blur, the tone shifts, and the meaning mutates depending on the platform. To him, this pattern exposes a kind of narrative restlessness, a need to stay in control of the version the world sees. Sources say Bauer doesn't call this manipulation. He calls it performance instinct, the same instinct that can make a person unforgettable or unbelievable. In his eyes, Meghan's gift is also her greatest liability, the power to reshape truth until it feels like fiction wrapped in sincerity. And that's the revelation Bauer leaves the audience with. Not that Meghan lied, but that her storytelling operates like a prism, turning one event into many reflections, all dazzling, none identical. But as the reflections multiply, one haunting question lingers. Which version was ever real? Once Bauer's revelations entered the public domain, the story stopped belonging to him and started belonging to everyone. According to media analysts, Meghan's pregnancy narrative became a living organism online, mutating across YouTube channels, podcasts, and social threads like digital wildfire. Each clip, each quote, each "did you hear what he said?" turned into fuel for a cultural bonfire that refuses to burn out.
Like many pathological liars and perpetual fictionalists, she takes incidents and she just melds them together to come up with a narrative that she wants to propound. But it doesn't make any sense. None of it adds up.
Sources say the power of this saga isn't in the facts, it's in the fascination. People aren't debating what's true anymore. They're debating what feels true. One group insists Bauer's evidence exposes contradictions. Another claims it's just clever editing and context twisting. The result? Endless engagement. Every question unanswered becomes a click, a view, a comment war waiting to happen. Bauer, allegedly aware of this ripple effect, never tries to control it. He lets the noise grow because the louder it gets, the longer his message stays alive. Public narrative, once driven by official statements, now thrives on speculation and perception. In that chaos, Meghan's story transforms again, not through her words, but through the world's obsession with them. It's a self-sustaining loop. Meghan speaks, Bauer analyzes, the internet interprets, and the story regenerates with every upload. No conclusion, no closure, just perpetual curiosity wrapped in royal drama. And that's the final twist. Even when Meghan says nothing, her silence echoes louder than ever. Because in the digital age, a mystery doesn't need to be solved. It just needs to stay alive. And that's the thing about Meghan's story. It never ends. It just changes shape. Every new interview, every selective detail, every well-timed silence keeps the audience guessing.
Oh my dear, look at Archie swing from side to side, proving that he wasn't only an athlete in terms of being able to deep dive like Tom Daley, but he was an acrobat like one of the Walenda brothers, and sailing across from side to side as if he were crossing the Niagara Falls on a high wire. Swoosh to the left, swoosh to the right.
Tom Bauer didn't just expose inconsistencies, he exposed a cycle where emotion replaces evidence and attention replaces accountability. But as the world keeps dissecting her every move, one truth remains. Meghan knows how to control a narrative better than almost anyone alive. Whether you see it as manipulation or mastery, it's impossible to look away. And that's exactly why this story refuses to fade, because every answer only breeds another question. If you thought this was the peak of royal controversy, think again. In our previous video, we broke down how another explosive royal biographer uncovered Meghan's alleged connections to a much darker royal chapter, a connection so bold it reportedly left palace insiders fuming. You'll want to see that for yourself right after this, because here on Star Spotlight, we don't chase the gossip, we decode the game. Where power, fame, and secrets collide, that's where we shine. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, join the investigation, and don't blink, because the next twist in this royal saga might already be unfolding.